Welcome to the Intrinsic First Leadership Podcast. I'm Aaron Robbins with Intrinsic First. Don't forget to like and subscribe to stay up to date on our latest episodes. Ready to dive into the world of leadership? Let's get started. Welcome back to the Intrinsic First Leadership Podcast. We're very excited for this episode because we have two guests today, which actually just occurred to me as I said that. I got to figure out how I'm going to do all the editing with two extra people, so now 5 people, but that's cool. So anyways, Jaime, Rich, and Randy Wight are here with us, and they just released a book or about to release a book called The Power of Yes and Communication, effectively communicate, collaborate, and innovate using improv techniques. It's right here to our camera, although I'll probably just put a screenshot of it up in the video. And yeah, so we're going to talk about kind of the implications of leajaeurship and improv, which is something I'd love to incorporate into our offerings, which hopefully we'll be able to do as we're working with Jaime and Randy in the future.
It's so needed too.
Yeah,
it really
definitely. So to kind of start out, Jaime, Randy, do you mind maybe doing some quick introductions? Tell us about yourself, your backgrounds, your company, the book. Maybe that's too much. We'll go incrementally one at a time. But yeah, it'd be great if you could introduce yourselves.
Hello, everyone. My name is Jaime Rich. I'm executive director of Spontaneous Mind, which is a fairly new nonprofit. We've been around for 2 years and co-founder. The nonprofit is all about improv and using improv for education. I've been doing improv for about 9 years, started taking classes. Before that, I worked for a few nonprofits in the field of underage substance use prevention. And before that, I have a graduate degree in exercise physiology. So I worked in fitness, wellness. Somehow it's all connected. Believe it or not, I think it's connected somehow. And I am also a player in and co-producer and creative director for Act 2 Improv, which is a troupe we have up here in Northern California. And I teach improv all over the Bay Area, from kindergartners literally up to 80-year-old, from beginning level to advanced level. And we believe, both of us, that improv is not only for the stage, but that it's for every facet of life and every form of communication. So that's really what we were bringing to the conference this week and what we hope to speak more about.
Awesome. Thank you. Randy?
All right. So my background is that of corporate America. I worked for some fairly large food companies and nutrition companies for a number of years. My team helped launch Muscle Milk, for example, back in 2000. It's still around, making people bigger as they sit there and drink their muscle milk. It's a wonderful legacy for me. But as it pertains to the improv scene, I got involved about 13 years ago. I co-produced with Jaime our shows, both the Act 2 shows and our Partners in Crime series, which is a fully improvised play that we do and we can customize for our corporate customers and bring some of their business into a whodunit on-site or virtually. So we really look at what the underlying principles of improv and how those could be applied in business and in other facets of life. And we really do believe, as Jaime indicated, that it is, I like to say that improv starts when the car doesn't. So when you go out into the driveway and sit down and turn the key and it doesn't happen, you are in improv land from there on. And if you're not prepared to deal with the world, when it doesn't go your way, then you really have not been properly grounded in how to use tools of improv. And we believe that this transcends simply life and business, but personal life as well. And we try to integrate it in every facet of it. My performance background started in the 80s. I was a stand-up comic for a number of years and finished very well in a regional Showtime Funniest Person in America. And I still teach comedy at the theater ahead of our improv classes, which are later in that same theater. So I work both sides of the fence, the improv side and the comedy side, and I enjoy both. But my real love is improv, and that's how Jamie and I found one another.
How long did you guys know each other? Like, what's your timeline for working together? And
5 or 6 years, something like that, I think.
Yeah, I'd say like about 6 years.
Okay, great.
Seems like only yesterday.
That's good.
That's a nice thing to say.
Are you doing a lot with organizations? I mean, you're at the Talent Development Conference, so, that's a lot of organizations incorporating training and development. Can you kind of talk to what you're doing in terms of improv with organizations and how that works?
I currently teach at a national laboratory up here in Lawrence, Livermore Labs. And I teach engineers about improv, and they're actually very receptive to it. So I've been teaching an ongoing class there for probably a year now. And we're actually going to start a second class to prepare them to perform in a show at the end. And there's a group of them. Not everybody wants to do that, but there's a group who wants to do that. And in the beginning, the classes were all about just improv, basic improv. The one I'm currently teaching, we're starting to take some more business slants to it. The one I'm teaching now is improv for presentations. So ways to bring in improv skills into your presentation style and presentations you're doing. We also have done improv for team building. So I do a lot of exercises that are specifically to bring a team together, to make them more cohesive, or to work through challenges.
Yeah, and along those same lines, the first corporate client I had was Uber. And I also worked with the engineers there. It's very challenging a lot of times to work with left brain thinkers when it comes to improv, because they want there to be a finality, a scripted answer, something that's finite and that there's a point on. And so much of life is in the gray. It's the part that's not quantifiable. That's the human element. And I think improv does a really wonderful job of embracing the human element, especially as it pertains to things like what we call in the grand scheme mistakes or failure. And we teach people to use our toolkit to embrace failure, to understand that there are no mistakes, that whatever is said can be integrated into a final solution. And that sort of starts with the yes and.
Right. Can you kind of talk to what a program would look like, or if somebody was to participate? I mean, without going, you don't have to go in like extra detail, but what I guess just to make sure we're all on the same page, kind of what is improv? What does that look like when you go in and teach a class, and how does it work?
Well, first of all, it looks different depending on the group. Like I talk about improv, I have to improv what I have planned, because I actually do have a learning plan whenever I go into a group or a new class. But I don't know often until I walk in, what are the ages of the people here? What are their levels? Like one of the first classes I did, I walked in and they were literally all in their 70s and 80s. So I had to change a lot of my plans to, we'll be sitting. We usually don't sit in improv. So just to say that it's never a pat course that I just go in and this is what I'm teaching. And so I have to be ready to morph and talk to whatever information I can get beforehand. But given that, they will again look very different depending on the needs of the company. Like we could go in and do one class for an hour, just a fun class, get to have a group to know each other. We would do fun games, nothing too serious, but some get to know you things, some laughing. And then it builds from there, the more time that I have to work on. All the exercises that we would do would connect to the three main principles of improv. One being, as Randy just talked about, and as was seen on the cover of our book, yes and. So agreeing to the reality that your partner is setting for you. The other really important one, second one, is make your partner look good. So it's all about your partner, whether it's your business partner. This also can transcend into personal relationships. How do you support that partner? I had taught a class last night and this came up. If one person is going down a rabbit hole that the scene doesn't need, that other person has got to be able to pull them out of that so that the scene can end successfully. So we work on that as far as partnerships. And the last one, again, that Randy somewhat referred to, is to be spontaneous, to get your mind out of that pre-thinking, pre-planning. That is that's one of the hardest things for people. We're doing these fun games and they're thinking, oh, okay, by the time it comes to me, I know what I'm going to say. I've got the most clever thing to say. This is what I'm going to say. But that's not what you want to do in improv. You don't want to think beforehand about what I'm going to say, which is scary. That is scary for people. It brings them out of their comfort zones. And one of the big things that goes under being spontaneous is no mistakes. To have people feel freer to say whatever answer they want to say. We met with no judgment in a warm atmosphere, which improv really brings. That's one of the main things I hear about the people in my classes. They bond together. They form these social groups. They're trusting each other. They have so much fun together. They leave laughing. It's the highlight of their day. Those are just some of the things I've heard. But so going from there, I went from the smallest increment, which could be, quick, come on, I just need you to do a breakout session, hour class, to a full 2-day train the trainer, train the upper level management or whoever, or the trainers in the company, to teach their employees about bringing in improv skills into whatever their environment looks like. So we equip them to be able to trickle down the information.
Yeah. So how do you define the skills and specifically maybe for a leader? What are some of the key skills you think that improv really helps develop for leaders?
Communication. I know that's a really big, broad thing, but a lot of what improv's about is sending and receiving messages successfully. And you have to know how to send a message so that it was received well, and how to receive a message the same way. So again, with yes and, we talk about attentive or active listening. What does that look like? And positivity. And I think a big thing for leaders, really, the yes and is really important, because if they start with one of their team members comes up and they know they're going to get a no, but that's not going to work, right away, team member shut down. So changing their vernacular to start with yes and, even if they don't 100% agree with whatever their teammate or their subordinate, whoever's bringing to them, you create a more warm and welcoming environment if you start with yes and. So I would say communication, a big part of it, and also seeing their group, whoever it is, their, again, subordinates, their team, as partners. And what does that look like? If you're supporting each other, how the group is going to work better together. And then for their own skills as a leader and presenter, again, that spontaneity. How can they think on their feet if one of their team members comes to them with who knows what? We would do role modeling. Like, this is what I'm always experiencing with my employees coming to me, and this is their main complaint. Well, what's the main thing? How are you usually answering them? And is it working?
Yeah. I think of Steve Carell when he played Michael Scott in The Office is like an example of what not to do. He always defaults to being the guy and he just kills everyone and they're dead. And then they stop and they like basically kick him out of his improv group.
Yeah, we try not to kill everyone in our
Right.
Maybe a couple people, but not everyone.
Yeah. What about like empathy and like I think of, is there a difference in improv between improv and like role play? I have a family member that has a company that does interactive theater where they'll, act out. They have professional actors that come and act out, organizational scenes, very high emotion type stuff, sexual harassment, things like that. Does improv play into that? Can you do certain, set up certain scenes that way so that it almost helps employees or leaders practice, situations?
For sure. Yeah. A total improv would be just getting one idea from an audience. We call it an inspiration, and just going from there and doing a scene. But more role play would be getting a specific scenario. Like when we get inspirations for scenes, we usually get a location, a relationship between two people, or a word that just starts a scene, and we go from there. And it could work that way too, because you could ask for any of those things that pertain to the work environment that you're in. Like, keep it to this work environment, but throw me a word that has to do with what you're experiencing.
Right.
Or you could get more specific and say, we can role play this situation that you're finding a challenge in, and let's see if we can come to solutions.
Nice.
I was just going to interject that a lot of times to be an effective leader, you need to be able to connect with your employees. They need to believe that they're both seen and heard. And in this role play scenario situation, we've constructed things like skeletons where we have an outline of what it is you're trying to achieve in a communication setting. And to Jamie's point, then get sort of specific about that allows us to then go in and act in those capacities as characters that then the entire group, or maybe small group or management group, can look at that and say, see where the failings are in the communication. So a lot of times it's the meta, it's being able to see you doing something, stepping outside of the actual setting and then looking down on it gives you a perspective that you don't usually get in either a management or leadership role, but it's very critical for employees, whether they be middle management or senior management, to think that they're being seen and heard. So I think improv is a great way to allow everyone to have a seat at the table and be seen by management in a way that's conducive to growing the culture or improving the culture or changing the culture.
And I was just thinking of one quick thing, that when you said characters, that makes it a little more safe in a work environment. So we would never, of course, play real people's names. Like if somebody came up with, well, what really bothers me is when Joanne comes in and she drinks all the coffee in the break room. Well, I'm not going to be Joanne and be a specific person. But we often remind my class, it's not you. You're playing a character. So that's a safety zone for anybody doing improv. You're playing a character. No one can say to you, I can't believe you're being so mean. I'm playing a character in a scene. So,
have you ever had a situation where it got a little too real?
Well, it's funny you ask that today. You want to say, because you were there, Randy.
Yeah, Jamie was busy. She had to go do a show, and I was finishing up one of her classes. And a scene came up where two individuals were playing a role of a wife who had retreated to a public park, and the husband had then caught up with her and wanted to explain his side of the story. And it got really real, really fast. Because I think both the players were drawing on personal past experiences, and it got very visceral and contentious. And I had to stop the scene because they stopped being characters and became themselves doing different voices, but they were really playing out life experiences. And that ends up actually being damaging to the people involved. Mm-hmm. And the people watching feel very uncomfortable. So there is a line there, and we have to make sure that the players understand that they are playing characters and not doing some kind of cathartic role play that allows them to get out something they couldn't say to their real husband or wife. That could be bad.
So
because we're not therapists.
Right. So in that case, they were coworkers, and they just seemed like they happened to have a somewhat synergistic situation that they were kind of both acting out what they maybe couldn't do from home.
They were actually students, not cohorts, just students in
okay, got it.
Adult ed class. They'd been together a long time.
Yeah.
Few classes working together.
Right. So there's an aspect, it sounds like, of you got to, there's facilitation for sure then, making sure. Yeah. And especially when people are, it sounds like even when they've been doing it for a while. Yeah, that's really interesting. But I could definitely see then how if you're doing this with a group of coworkers or a team, talk about building trust, that can be really huge. And you're building it off of these experiences that are acted, but it's real in terms of the people and, the experiences they're having, the stories they're gaining. So yeah, that's really fantastic.
There's a tremendous amount of richness in what you folks do. And I wish people could see it. The people who are sponsoring you don't get it right away, probably. They may, and that enables you to sort of open the door to the grandiose and great things you could do for people. I teach long, week-long workshops on leadership. And one of the greatest fears I can think of is for someone to get trapped into a role they think the role requires and never get out of it. Actually, what it results in being pretty dysfunctional because they can't seem. There's a psychological term called alexithymia. Have you ever heard of that?
No, say the word again.
Alexithymia. Yeah, Ketz de Vries who is a Belgian psychologist, believes that many leaders are trapped in alexithymia, which is that they don't believe the role allows for emotion. And so with the absence of emotion, can you imagine filling the day through interacting with people in which you try to minimize any form of visual or spatial emotion. In this particular case, I was teaching personality theory because I want people to see that there's levels to their personality, one being affect, second being cognition, and the third being persona, which are different aspects of what people do. And so as I began to study these players or these real people and began to lead them into certain forms of understanding, certain what I would consider to be behaviors that fall into roles such as being an extrovert or being an introvert, being a direct directive person or things like that. And as I began to do that, I said, okay, guys, I've begun to understand you. I hope you feel trust here in this group. And let's have some fun. And you'll get a chance to do this with me, but I'm going to give you a word that represents, and I want you to act. I want you to show or demonstrate whatever that word is without speaking. So it had to be a nonverbal communication of the concept. And as luck would have it, I had a young man, very, very creative guy, and I gave him the word joy. And the word joy for him was, I was hoping I would see some emotion because his name, Miller, let's call him Miller for the time being. Miller, he never really smiled, never did anything that would be normally acceptable as fun. And so I said, Miller, would you here's your word. And he looked at the word. He couldn't speak it. But he could speak in a role if he wanted to. And I said, I'll be your direct report. And he said, okay, Drea, sit down, please. And there's no place to sit. And if I sat down, I had to sit on the floor below the table level. And sure enough, I sat on the floor below the table level. And he said, "No, listen, I want to tell you I want to tell you something that I've noticed about you, Drea." He said, you are one of the most skillful people I've ever seen, but I don't want you to tell anybody I said this. And so I couldn't carry it out of the room. But it seemed like a tremendous contradiction in terms. I want you to know that I think you're one of the most skillful people we have here at work, and I hope that you continue to do that as much as you can. And of course, the more he kept doing some of this stuff, it was so contradictory to what he was saying to me that it right there jumped out at you. He's not really saying joy. He's really saying the absence of joy, and somebody got it. Somebody actually got it.
Interesting.
And it was wonderful. All of a sudden, people began to say, that's what, and people, Miller was a skillful young man, and he was well respected in the group. But all of a sudden, they got this whole other side of him that was able to say something that was so contradictory that it made clear sense about what he was trying to represent. And somebody yelled out joy, and he goes, "Yes!" It was one of a creative. But the point of what I'm saying is that you folks, if you can do what you do, and I imagine you recognize this, that some things jump out at people that they didn't expect, but who are capable of learning them through it, a set of actions or skills that can stand them in good stead. Because Miller really got it. He got the idea that he could be terribly boring and incredibly non-reinforcing of anything other than sadness. It's really just a great experience for him.
You made me think of something as you were talking a lot. Some of the stuff we do in improv is called endowments or offers. And I work a lot with my classes on endowing your partner with one, when you said affect, would be an affect or an emotion, or a status is another thing to play. And that really brings to the environment, because sometimes you can have status. People think of status as, well, the boss is the higher status, of course, and then the underling is the lower status. But if the boss doesn't know what they're doing, and everybody has a poor opinion of him, and this guy who's working for him is seen more as the leader, been there forever, they don't necessarily, the status does not connect to their job titles. And then with the endowing of affect or emotion, it does force, let's say, a person, like if you endow your partner with, "You look really sad today," and then I have them, you need to take that on, answer them back in that emotion. And some of different emotions are very hard for people to do, to get them out of their usual, but it's growing.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
That's marvelous. I've often one that I really enjoy is you are now endowed to be able to tell your boss your truth. First of all, nobody wants to tell their truth to power. Nobody does. I mean, that's like a no, I'm not going to do that. But anyway, that's that. I understand what I think. I intuitively understood what you said, and it was really clear. Yeah, and I like the idea of endowment. That's really great. But I just wait a minute. That's not really the truth. I'm just pretending that I'm talking to you about.
Remember, I'm a character.
Yes. You're not wearing any clothes, but I didn't mean that.
Yeah. Well, that's huge on emotional intelligence too, right? Is helping people recognize the emotions by acting them out. Because I think that's really lacking. Where you have this emotional intelligence, people are reading about, they're taking classes all about it, but to truly be able to recognize your own emotions and others, right? And then to be able to think cognitively about what your actions and behaviors are going to be.
Or the biggest one is using your emotional intelligence to solve a problem, a work-related problem, because essentially that's where the gold is. And for me is to getting people to telling their truths, or better yet, seeing a problem from a different way. And I imagine you would have that. You have that possibility too, to set up something that sets in motion a problem that's reflected in the way they deal in a group. Because in a group, people are just. I mean, some of the worst fixes. People you often call me in and say, "Can you fix this executive?" And I go, "What?" Yeah, he's 7 out of 8 people in his unit have just quit. And his peers don't like him, and they don't want to talk to him. He's a political animal. He just go on and on and on about the data. I said, well, why don't we just tell him? It's like the guy who walks into a psychiatrist's office and says, Doc, you got to help me. It's my brother. He's driving me crazy. He said, well, calm down. What's the problem? I'm telling you what the problem is. My brother. He thinks he's a chicken. And Psych says to him, well, why don't we just cut to the chase and tell him he's not? He said, I can't, I need the eggs. And you got people running around doing things to other people because they need it. It's not functional. It's not right. It's not. And so getting people to break through some of that.
I think a lot of,
by the way, let me tell you, there's an egg.
So where I go with this, because my daughters did improv in high school, and one of the fears they had was blanking out, right? Imagine somebody doing improv for the first time. It's like their fear is not public speaking. It's just not knowing what to say. And something you said that I thought resonated with me, because I heard my daughters express it as well, that it's more about team building in the sense that you're there to help others. So when you recognize a team member on stage blinking out, then you kind of come in there to help them out. Not necessarily rescue them, but to help them move on. And it's done in such a discreet manner that it's not, it's accepted. That's what it's about, helping others. And when you put a leader, I feel, doesn't show that compassion sometimes because they're maybe full of themselves or whatever the case may be. But if you put them in a role where you explain that to them, like, you're here to help others, you really start to invoke some of that, servant leadership, principles and help them actually play that out. And I think the idea of playing out, whether it's through affect and endowments or putting them in certain roles, is that if they can act it first as a character and not them, they actually know what it feels like to do it for themselves and do it in real life. Did I get that right?
Yeah, no, that's very true. And as you said, what comes more with experience in improv, and this is actually, we're talking about this in my class last night, is stepping outside of yourself, seeing what the scene needs, or in this case, it would be the situation. And as you're talking, how do I shift and change to get us out of either the same pattern that these two people always go to, or again, your partner is faltering in whatever way, doesn't know what to say. How do I, as you're talking and doing things, how do I step in and save this person?
One of the things that we learn are some go-to bridges that help people understand that I'm in trouble on stage. So you don't want to say, hey, I have no idea what to say.
Right.
But that ended up being one of the ways we tell our partner, I need you, is in character, look at them, cross your arms, stare right at them and say, sometimes I just don't know what to say to you.
That's brilliant, because how many people, how many times in the workplace, especially, that people need help and they don't ask?
Right. So it was our code to our partner. I'm stuck. I need you. Help me.
Nice.
That's fantastic.
Nice.
Okay, I'm going to ask that question again. How does that change for children? Because you said you'd go all the way down to kindergarten, right? So does improv how does it look different at that level as, children, I guess? What do you do for them that's teaching some of these skills?
Well, they have a lot of imagination. Play comes easily to them. They don't necessarily have a comfort zone. So anything goes. And it's very surprising when I taught my first kindergarten. It's a lot of classroom management, in all honesty, with kindergarten, first grade. Okay, let's get out of that pile of all of you on top of each other. Remember, we were doing an exercise. But letting them use their imagination, which comes so freely for them, letting them be heard in whatever exercise we're doing for them, let them play pretend and go to their strengths. I was with this was an after school program of like K to 5th graders. And they were acting out a little scene, a little play. And she must have been 3rd grade, maybe 4th grade, was narrating, and she was amazing. She was the narrator, and she was just like making it up on the fly, and that was her role. She loved being the narrator. So I think with kids, some of it is easier because they're more comfortable with being silly, playing, using their imagination. And then some is harder because there's more corralling of them.
I just had a great prompt for you. Get a bunch of executives in a room and have them be a bunch of kindergartners.
Good, Jimmy. Oh my gosh.
And one big thing about improv, even with all the principles and all the team development and all that, is just that it's fun. It's freeing. It's laughter. And that basic thing that we all do, laughing, smiling, really brings a group together.
Right on.
How do you think introversion and extroversion plays into people's participation in improv? Because it's, I think about people that are extroverted, they want to, share their emotions more outwardly. But if you're in this very close-knit, trusting group, maybe it's not as big of a thing, and introverts can really kind of get into it as well.
Very true. I have had a lot of people come into my class and say, I'm pretty much an introvert. This is really out of my comfort zone. And it doesn't take them very long, in all honesty. 10 minutes into the first class, and they are out there and enjoying themselves and having fun. And then the extroverts, who you think makes more sense for them to be doing improv, sometimes they have to be in a scene work held back a little bit because they may take over a scene and lead a scene.
They can be bulldozers. They see an opportunity to assert some idea and they just start going. Whereas the introvert is processing, listening, one of my favorite examples of an introvert doing something we talked about earlier, which is freezing on stage, turned out to be one of the greatest scenes I'd ever seen on an improv stage anywhere. She couldn't process what was happening, and she just locked up. She didn't know about I don't know what to say to you right now, but instinctively she crossed her arms and just stared at her partner. And he knew she was stuck. So for the entire scene of probably 3 minutes, he talked the whole time. And by facial expression, she moved him to different parts of the conversation.
Wow.
And so he would say to her, like, honey, I'm sorry, I'm late bringing home the bacon. Oh my God, you're right. I was supposed to bring home milk and bacon. I can't believe I did. I'm so sorry. You're right. I wouldn't talk to me either. And he just ran the scene. And it's because he had the training and toolbox to understand my partner's in trouble. I need to be the extrovert here. I need to be the one who just runs this deal. Mm-hmm. And she had one word in the whole scene, and they thought she was brilliant. And at the end of the scene, she says, okay. The whole place fell down laughing. Thought it was the funniest thing they'd ever seen. And the only thing she said was okay. And she had no clue what was going on the rest of the time. So she had to watch the tape back later and go, oh, that was a pretty good scene.
Yeah. I was going to ask, do you record all the improv?
Yes.
Yeah, we do. Yeah. Every show.
Is that mandatory for them? Does that throw them into any kind of fear?
No, we don't record the classes. We record our troupe shows and then the show that Randy and I do with a third person.
Okay.
Got it. I'm almost wondering, like, especially Jimmy. Jimmy's got 4 kids. I got 3. We could have like a little family. That's probably enough people, right? Start doing improv with the kids.
That's a troupe in itself. Yeah.
I coach like 11-year-olds, and my background is in performance psychology, and so my mind goes like in 1,000 different directions of how this can be used for like a little sports team, just to kind of bring them together. Especially when you get to like middle school, because middle schoolers can be vicious, and so.
My girls are both in middle school, and Jimmy and I talk all the time. He's like, "Yeah, man, that was the worst for me. Good luck." Not to mention, my girls are both in theater, so they bring the drama home with them in more ways than one.
But there's so many great lessons as we're discussing here that you can just teach children. You know how to kind of support one another, and I think I just love this medium for teaching. It's great.
Well, and also I've worked with young people a lot in my whole career when I was working for nonprofits, and I love working with young people. The energy, the realness, but one of the basic things just to bring improv into them is so that they can interact face to face with somebody. Not
get rid of those phones and see everything. Yeah,
dude. Yesterday, so we were at my son's open house. And my daughter is on her phone, apparently texting someone. And one of her friends that she loves and sleeps over at her house just walks right by,
didn't even know
looking at her like, and I'm like, get your head out of your freaking phone. Your friend's right. Oh, I'm texting another friend. You got a friend, right? You're like, what is happening right now?
Yeah.
Or I always thought you were going to say she was texting the friend that was walking by.
Well, yeah, I was like, why don't you text her to say hi? Yeah.
Look up.
Can I steer towards comedy for a second, Randy, if you're okay with this question?
Sure.
I didn't realize this, but when I watch a lot of stand-ups, and there's this distinction between a comedian that has their set and then other comedians who do crowd work. And I've always felt like crowd work, I enjoy crowd work, especially when it's done really well. But is that a form of improv for a comedian then? Is it looked down, or is it just a different way of doing business?
Yeah, I used to work out of the same bar up in Napa, Santa Rosa area. Anyway, they would hold up spots for Robin to work on new material, and he would come in. And one of the things that he was brilliant at was what I call skeleton comedy, where he has areas that he's going to investigate and then work with the audience on, and has like 2 or 3 different if this, then that scenarios in his head already. So then when he asks an audience a question, he knows to a high degree of certainty they're going to go down one of these 3 paths. And he's ready with the answers. It looks completely made up on the spot, but he's pre-planned a lot of what the possible answers might be. It gives an illusion of complete improvisation, and it is to a certain degree, but he has played the game in a way that gives him an advantage over somebody who's just riffing with the audience. We call it riffing, by the way, when you invite, if you will, heckling or audience interaction. So there's a lot of different degrees to it. The biggest difference between improv and comedy is the muscles you use. And that is, in improv, you are building. It's yes and. You're building with a partner. In comedy, you're setting up a premise to cut its head off. Comedy is predicated on 2 words, yes and no. When you think yes is going to happen and no occurs, it's funny. When you think no is going to occur and yes occur, it's funny. I think Will Rogers said, falling down the stairs with a tray full of drinks is always funny unless it's you holding the drinks.
Yeah.
So it is a thing where riffing with the audience, it is a high risk but high reward opportunity. And you better know the basics of comedy. And that is, you want to make love to the audience. If they're on your side, they're much more forgiving and they'll let you do a lot more with them than if they're not on your side and you start to try to crush the audience members instead of working with them. So those would be my cautionary tales for anybody thinking, oh, just get up there and make some stuff up and talk to the audience. It'll be hilarious. Those are highly skilled, highly practiced, and they understand all the tricks of the trade before they try something like that.
I was recently at Matt Rife when he was at the Hollywood Bowl recently, and he does a lot of crowd work, especially towards the end. And we're in California. His whole set is about older people, and he finds this 68-year-old woman in the crowd. And next thing you know, he's smoking a joint with her in the middle of the crowd, which he's like, only in California. So that answer, I always wonder like how much of that is spontaneous, how much it is improv. But thank you. Yeah, thank you for clearing that up. That makes a lot of sense now that you put it that way. Very cool.
Well, I did. Yeah. So coming back to the book, so you guys are about to release it, correct? It's coming out soon. So what were kind of your main goals and intentions with the book, and what do you hope people get out of it when they read through it?
To see again that the principles of improv are not at all just for the stage, that they can be helpful in any sort of relationship.
Nice.
Work versus personal. There are go-to exercises in the book to practice the different headings of the chapters, the principles that we talked about. So I think the hope is that people see improv as an easily accessible go-to tool in their toolbox to bring into any environment.
Yeah, I think that's a great way to put it. It is sort of pulling back the curtain on this mystique of improv being this really difficult thing to do. And really, if you follow some very clear basics that you'll find in the book, it's accessible to everyone. And it depends, like most things, on practice, getting better at these things. Right.
So this being able to come up with stuff right off the top of your head is essentially a skill that you can practice and get better at. It's almost that recall.
It's a skill. Yeah, it's definitely a skill, and it's getting at ease with it. Like there's some things, exercise that I do, a lot of them with spontaneity, that I always say, just spit anything out. Just spit it out. Like it doesn't matter if it doesn't make sense. It doesn't matter if it's not the right word or the most clever word. Just say something that starts with that letter. Can be a nonsense word. So that's where we start, just getting words out.
Right.
One of the sayings that we used to say when it came to that spontaneity thing, jump and the net will appear. And if you take that attitude of not worrying about it, just go. It works out.
Yeah, I love that. Again, talking about an organization that where trust is so important, and being able to teach them those skills, give them a stage to perform, and then they can just do it, and then they can take somebody's there to catch them. Then that starts to build that trust, and it just spills over into the workplace or on the
Right.
team or whatever. So no, I think it's wonderful. It's really good stuff.
Well, we're pretty much at 11 o'clock, and I want to respect you guys' time, and but we always end in a joke, and since we have a comedian here,
Yeah.
I don't want to, Jamie, I don't want to take away your thunder but we always end in a joke, and I've got one ready just in case, which I might tell too, and I think you're not going to like it. It's probably pretty bad, but Randy or
Randy,
Jamie, or both of you, do you guys have any jokes that you might want to share? They got to be clean. They can't be like explicit, because we try to keep this.
Please save us from Aaron's joke.
Friendly,
Whatever you do, please.
Whatever, you're gonna love it. But yeah, go ahead. Do you
Jamie?
have a good joke?
Randy?
Well, unfortunately, when you retire from doing stand-up, all your friends come to you with cocktail jokes that are not suitable for prime time.
Yeah, right.
So I think we should jump over to Aaron and let Aaron tell a joke,
Yeah.
because we'll be able to keep it in this.
But dad jokes are welcome too. If you have any of those come to mind, well, maybe.
Yeah. Well, mine's actually borderline, because it's the one I told you, but I have another one that you haven't heard yet either.
Okay.
It's very short, but I find all these on YouTube. So do you know what what do a red and a green apple have in common? They're both red except for the green one.
I'm with you, Jamie. I don't know. Jeez.
Hey, Randy, come on, that's fun.
Randy, can you explain that one? I didn't get it.
Okay, guy walks into a bedroom and he's carrying a sheep under his arm. No, I can't tell that joke.
No, tell
All
it.
right,
Tell
so-
it. We can always cut it out.
Yeah, you can cut it out if we have to.
You got to keep going.
Okay, so and this was told to me by, and this is talking about leadership. This was told to me by the head of a corporation that owned my company, and he was out of Australia, and we were at the Magic Castle in LA, and he starts to tell this joke, and I'm in rapt attention. Also, he's not only the chairman of the board, CEO, but that's not the only reason I'm listening. I love listening to his accent, and he comes in and he says, so this guy comes in to the bedroom and he's got a sheep under his arm. And he's standing in the doorway to the bedroom. And his wife looks up from the bed at him standing there with this sheep under his arm. And he's talking and he says, this is the pig I was sleeping with while you were gone. And the wife says,
No.
you idiot. That's not a pig. And he says, I wasn't talking to you.
Oh my!
We can definitely use that.
It's good. It's good. It's
Great.
good.
That's
I can see it coming.
I know.
Nice, Randy.
Okay, well,
Very nice.
how about that?
Very good.
That was
That
good.
works.
That was good.
That works.
Yeah.
Jamie, you don't have to, but if you have one on the tip of your tongue, you're more than welcome to play.
As much as I've got improv on the tip of my tongue, I do not have jokes on the tip of my tongue.
Yeah.
So
All good.
All right. Final message.
What's the final message on improv you'd love everyone to kind of know or take away?
And then how do they find you? That's the other question.
Yeah.
they find us at spontaneousmind.org or Jamie at spontaneousmind.org or
Randy at spontaneousmind.org.
and we are passionate. We love improv. We want to bring it to the masses. We love what we do. We're flexible with programming, with we just enjoy it so much. We want to bring it to the masses.
It should get out there further than
I can't wait. I can't wait to work with you guys. I really look forward to it. You guys have been awesome. So thank you so much for joining us. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thanks
You mean you still feel that way even after that joke?
I want another one, Randy. That's how I feel about that.
Glutton for punishment.
Yeah, we'll have to do this again, and we'll do some more jokes.
Yes, for sure.
Congrats! You made it to the end of the episode. Thanks for tuning in. We genuinely hope that you found value in our conversation. If you liked it, please click that like button below and subscribe so that you can stay up to date on our current episodes. And if you didn't like it, you can click the dislike button, but make sure you click it twice. We're eager to hear from you, whether it's your thoughts, questions, topic ideas, or if you're interested in our leadership training and consulting support. Leave us a comment below or reach out to us directly at info@intrinsicfirst.com. We're open to any and all feedback. Thanks again for joining us. We look forward to having you back for more insightful leadership discussion. Until next time.